Hey, what's up? My name is Daniela and today I'm going to talk about the top 10 books I read in 2018. As I said, I have selected 10 best books of the 66 books I read last year, but first I have 3 honorable mentions. The first one is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This is a domestic thriller about a woman who has agoraphobia, meaning that she can't leave her house. And one day she sees something strange in the neighbor's house, but nobody believes her. This thriller was really hyped last year and it was totally deserved. I absolutely love the writing style, I love the main characters. It had a great atmosphere and the plot twists were shocking and unexpected, so yeah, it's definitely a great thriller. The second honorable mention is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This children's classic was so enjoyable and I absolutely loved the characters, not only Anne, who is a precious kid, but also characters like Marilla were great and there were great descriptions of nature and it was such a heartwarming read. I highly recommend picking this up if you didn't read it as a kid. And the last honorable mention is The Husband's Secret by Liane Moriarty. Liane Moriarty writes these suspenseful contemporaries/mysteries, and Big Little Lies was one of my favorite books of 2017, and now I basically want to read everything she has written. In The Husband's Secret we follow a bunch of families, and this woman finds a letter written by her husband that says something like, "Open after I die." And when she mentions it to her husband, he totally freaks out because it contains his dark secret from the past. The characters in this book were so well fleshed out and I really liked them. And I think that Liane Moriarty writes really good introverted characters. It was gripping, it was entertaining, and I can't wait to read another one of her books. Okay, and now let's talk about the top 10 books I read last year. First, I'm going to quickly mention some stats. So, of the 10 books, 5 were contemporaries, 2 were mystery or thrillers, 1 was historical, 1 was fantasy, and 1 was dystopian. And 6 of them were adult and 4 were young adult. The order is from number 10 to number 1, but only approximately because obviously I love them all and it's hard to compare books from different genres. First, I want to talk about Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is a sci-fi book set in Chicago and we follow our main character named Jason, who is a physicist and he had a chance to work on some potentially groundbreaking experiments, but he gave up his career to have his family and now he has a son and works as a teacher. Sometimes he thinks about whether or not he made the right choice, and one day someone abducts him and knocks him unconscious. And when he wakes up, he is in a parallel version of his life where he didn't marry his wife, his son was never born, and he discovered how to move between different versions of a person's life. Now he realizes what he really wants, and that is to get back to his true life and his family. So he starts a journey through different versions of his life, and some of them are really similar to his true life, but not quite, and some of them are strange and futuristic, and some of them are really grim and even apocalyptic. This book made me think about how easily things can go wrong, and it's actually a miracle that we are still breathing and our choices are not black and white, and it's much better to actually live our lives in the present than agonize over past choices. This book totally sucked me in. It was gripping and full of action and plot twists, but we also delved deeper into Jason's mind, so it was really thought-provoking. I heard people mentioning that the idea is not very original, but nothing is really original at this time, so it depends on the execution, which I loved, so if you're into this type of books, I think it's worth reading. Next is The Hate You Give by Angie. As you probably know, this is a young adult contemporary inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's about police brutality, growing up in 2 different worlds, figuring out who you really are and if you should speak up or not. This book was so well written, the characters were fleshed out really well and they had a great dynamics. The main character named Star had to obviously deal with some heavy stuff, but also with some ordinary teenage stuff which were handled in a lighter tone, so it was also entertaining at times. This book not only gave me a lot of things to think about, but also affected me in a way that I didn't expect. Although our realities are totally different, I felt a connection to the main character. It's a really powerful book and I think it should be read by as many people as possible, and I highly recommend picking this up if you haven't already, and even if you don't normally read young adult contemporaries. Another one of my favorites was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. This is a historical/contemporary book and all the hype it got was totally deserved. It's about an actress got famous in Hollywood in the 50s, and now in her old age she asked this unknown journalist named Monique to write her biography. So Evelyn starts to tell Monique her life story, and Monique is really glad to be distracted from her life because her marriage is falling apart, and now her mission is to find out why Evelyn chose her to write her biography and also who was her true love. Evelyn Hugo is a Slytherin bisexual queen and one of the most complex and interesting characters I have ever read about. The story is full of queer people and the struggles they had to face at that time. It's about forbidden romance, which I loved, the ups and downs of famous people who are desperately trying to stay famous, intrigues and regrets or no regrets. The writing is amazing, the story is fascinating, and now I want to read everything Jenkins Reid has written. Next we have My Not So Perfect Life by Sophie Kinsella. This is an adult contemporary about a 26-year-old Katie who grew up in a small town and now she's trying to make it in a marketing company in London. On her Instagram she pretends that her life is perfect, but the reality is that everything is so much harder than she expected. There's also her intimidating boss named Dimitri who seems to have it all, but Katie learns that not everything is as it seems and that everything comes at a price. I don't think this book is perfect and I had a few issues with the main characters, but the bottom line is that it was such a fun read and it resonated with me. I could relate to a lot of things that were happening and I cried several times during reading this, which I certainly didn't expect, so yeah. Next we have Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. This is a second book in the arc of a side series in which technology progressed so much that most of the reasons for discontent and even natural death no longer exists. So there's this society of scythes who basically kill people to avoid overpopulation, and everything else is managed by artificial intelligence called Thunderhead. This series has such a great world building, and in this volume we learned so much more about this world, and it was really interesting to have Thunderhead as one of the characters. Obviously I can't say much about the plot because it's a sequel, but I really like the villains in this series because they are very intelligent and resourceful, so they had me on the edge of my seat. Like, I think there's nothing worse than boring villains. The final part was absolutely epic, it destroyed me, and the actual ending was such a cliffhanger that I need the next book now. Another book I loved last year is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. In this book, the main character Simon, who is gay, has an online relationship with a boy called Blue, who also attends his high school, but neither of them knows who the other one is. Developing a crush based on online communication is one of my favorite tropes of all time, probably because it's so relatable, and this romance was so cute and I loved both of the characters. It was also about coming out to the world, friends and family dynamics, some high school drama, but the online parts were my favorite and they shot the book to 5 stars very easily. Another young adult contemporary I loved was Love and Gelato by Jenna Welch. In this book we follow Lina, whose mother has recently died, and she wanted Lina to go to Florence, Italy to meet her father named Howard for the first time. Lina doesn't really want to go to Italy for the summer or even longer, and when she meets Howard it's kind of awkward between them. Lina gets her hands on her mother's journal, which she kept while she was studying photography in Florence. It contains the whole story of what happened between her mom and Howard, why she came back to the States and raised her alone. She also meets some kids who speak English, and a potential summer love is on the horizon. It was fascinating to slowly discover the secrets her mother had while she studied there, and to see Lina go to the same places and looking for her answers. Howard was a fun character and a great father figure, and it was amazing to see him and Lina grow closer eventually, and it made me cry because reasons. Yeah, this book really made me feel a lot of things, and I really wanted to go to Italy during reading this. There was a lot of description of food and gelato, and I absolutely love Italian food. I only had to imagine that it was a vegan version, so I kind of felt like in heaven. I listened to the audiobook and I think the narration was great, and it was nice to hear how things are pronounced, but I actually think that it would be ideal to listen to the audiobook while reading the book so I could see the spelling and hear the pronunciation. It definitely surprised me how much I loved this book. It was such a fun and heartwarming read, and it's one of the best young adult contemporaries I have read. Next, I'm going to talk about A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is about fairies. It wasn't as good as A Court of Mist and Fury because it couldn't possibly be, but I still loved it and I liked it much more than the first book. This book has 700 pages, but it definitely didn't feel like it, except for the fact that it kind of physically hurt to hold this paperback. It was a lot of time spent with characters I love. There was a lot of action and tension. I loved the High Lords meeting. The final battle was pretty epic, and the one part near the end destroyed me. This book and whole series has its problems and it's far from perfect, but the emotional connection I have with this series is something I can't and don't want to deny. I can't 100% decide which of the following two books was my favorite, but let's talk about Carrie of Evil by Robert Galbraith aka J.K. Rowling first. This is the third book in the Cormoran Strike series, and this was my favorite volume so far. In case you don't know, this is a series about a private detective called Cormoran Strike and a woman called Robin who works with him. In this book, we are dealing with a serial killer who sends a woman's leg to Robin. We knew from the start that he wants to harm Robin and frame Strike because we got his point of view, which was incredibly creepy and disturbing. Strike suspects 4 men from his past who have a reason to hate him and who are evil and violent. There are a lot of things I love about this series, like the characters and their dynamics, the writing, because I just love JKR's writing, and the descriptions of places in London and elsewhere. We learned much more about Strike's and Robin's past, and some of the parts were so sad to read about. We got some more reasons to hate Matthew, who is Robin's fiancé, because he's just horrible and he needs to go away. One thing I didn't love about this was that it got really gruesome and specific while describing some violent acts, including rape, so be aware of that. But other than that, I absolutely love this book. I'm currently reading book 4, named Lethal White, and it's really interesting so far. And the last book I'm going to talk about in this video is Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This is a contemporary about a 30-year-old woman called Eleanor who lives alone, doesn't have any friends and doesn't get along with her co-workers. She experienced some trauma when growing up and she's considered weird by society standards, but one day she meets an IT guy from a company and her life drastically changes. But it's not a romance, it's more about their friendship and helping people. It's a pretty slow-paced, character-driven story, and I absolutely love Eleanor as the main character. She was quirky and relatable, and the way she questioned social norms was hilarious. I absolutely love the writing style, and it was the kind of book that I was on page 15 and I thought, yep, I'm going to love this. It was fun, heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time, and I can't wait to read it again. So there you have it, these were my favorite books of 2018. Please leave me a comment and tell me if you read any of these books or if you want to. Or you can tell me what your favorite books of 2018 were, or leave me any other comment. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye! This series has such a great world building.